Do you want to move abroad, but you're not even sure where to start? Well, you've come to the right place because today I'm going to go over the 13 crucial things that you need to figure out and take care of before you can even make your move. Hi, I'm Cepee, rhymes with peppy, from SheHitRefresh.com, where I help women age 30 and over break free from a life of routine and start a life of travel, specifically to move abroad or travel the world long term. I myself made the move from Texas to Spain in 2015 when I was 35 years old, and 6 years later, I am still here living my best life. But when I made my move, I did not have a checklist to follow. It really was through trial and error how I figured out what I needed to do to make that move. But through my own experience and helping others make their own move abroad, I'm here to share all my knowledge and experience with you. So you're lucky because I have created this 13-step checklist that you can go through to make sure that you have checked all the boxes before you even make your move abroad. All right, let's get started. So number one on our list is thinking about where can you live? So when it comes to moving abroad, one of the first and most important things you're going to have to figure out is to consider where you can move to based on the viable visa and residency options that are available. So unfortunately, moving abroad entails a lot more than just packing your bags and finding a home in another country. Your biggest obstacle, especially if you're a U.S. citizen, is going to be finding that viable visa option that allows you to legally live in a country overseas. So if you're not a citizen of X country, then you're going to need some kind of visa, whether that's a work visa, a student visa, a retirement visa, a non-lucrative, a golden visa. There's so many visas out there, but you're going to have to be able to qualify for one of those in order for you to actually move into the country that you want to move to. So while you may want to live in Sweden or Australia, if you can't get a visa to live there, then you probably should start looking somewhere else. So how do you know if a country has a visa that's available for you? Well, you're going to have to do some research. You can consult the local embassy or consulate of the country you want to move to. But I know a lot of US citizens and people around the world are interested in moving to Europe. So if you're interested, I've already done the research for you. Come check out my digital book, I'm Outta Here, An American's Ultimate Visa Guide to Living in Europe. So this is a book where I outline the 17 easiest countries in Europe to move to based on viable visa options. In the book, there's included over 50 types of visas that you could qualify for. So I highly recommend checking out this book. And if you're not a US citizen, practically all the visas in here are available to you as well. So check out I'm Outta Here to see what your options are to making your dream of moving to Europe a reality. All right, so let's move on to number two. Now that you've done the research and you've identified where you can move to, now you have to think about where do you want to live. So you have those viable visa options, but you need to think about where in the world you want to call home because every country is unique and special, but you should definitely consider places that are going to be a good fit for you. So some of the things to consider when thinking about what country or city you want to move to is definitely quality of life. And that's very subjective. So think about your priorities and what is important to you because that's going to play a part into how much you're going to enjoy living in your new country and city. For me, when I moved to Spain, it was really important for me to live in a city where I did not have to drive. Coming from Houston, Texas, I spent so much of my life in my car and in traffic and driving long distances, and I wanted to be done with that. So I moved to Madrid, a city that has a great public transportation system, but also is a very walkable city. So think about quality of life and what's important to you. Another big thing to consider in this umbrella of where you want to live is climate. What kind of climate do you like? Do you like warm, sunny weather, or do you like sweater weather? Your climate can help you hone in on where you want to live. I love warm weather, so again, that's why I chose Spain. And now I live in southern Spain, where it is warm most of the year, and that's what I love. Another thing to consider is culture. Do you enjoy a culture that's more laid back, or would you prefer a more fast-paced vibe? So just generalizing, if we're talking about Europe, Southern Europe can have more laid back, chill Mediterranean vibe here, while countries in the north may have more similar to what we have in the US. So think about what kind of culture is important to you to have. Another important factor is, of course, taxes. So you're not going to be able to evade your taxes. As a US citizen, you're going to have to continue filing your taxes in the US, no matter where you live, but you do need to understand the tax implications and obligations of the country that you want to move to. And a lot of that's going to depend on, on how much you're going to have to pay, or what tax bracket you're in is going to depend on the type of visa you have, the amount of time you're in the country, your income level. So definitely do your research on that. And thinking about all of this, thinking about the country, you want to definitely hone in on what city you want to live in, and really think about some factors that you need to consider. You can think about your age, your finances, whether or not you have children, are you coming with a family, your personal interests, and other lifestyle preferences. I will say there's no such thing as a perfect place, so you will have to make some concessions, I think, no matter where you're going to live in the world, but you can definitely find a place that is going to be the best fit for you. So some things to keep in mind when thinking of a city is the location. Is access to nature important to you? How about international travel? Do you want to be close to an airport? So definitely look into that of where you're moving to. The size, do you want to be in a hustling, bustling city, which for me, Madrid was, and that's what I needed at the time? Or do you want to be somewhere quieter? Do you want to be in a smaller city? Do you want to be in a town, in a village? So definitely do your research on what your options are on where to live. Another big important thing to think about is cost of living. So this is going to vary widely from city to city within a country. So some things that are going to dictate what you can afford is definitely your income, but also the cost of living of where you want to live and how you want to live as well. And last, something else you should consider is language. So do you want to speak a foreign language? Are you eager to learn a new one? Which I highly encourage anyone who's moving to a country where they don't speak the native tongue, definitely put in the time to learn the language. Don't assume that English is going to be spoken widely everywhere, so be prepared to learn a new language if the country you want to move to does not have English as the main language. So consider those things when moving abroad. All right, so let's move on to number 3 here. The next crucial thing that you're gonna have to do is to get your paperwork in order. What do I mean by getting your paperwork in order? Well, essentially here, what I'm talking about is applying for your visa. Remember, in the first crucial thing you need to take care of is figuring out where you can move and what visa you're gonna qualify for. Once you know the country you wanna move to, you're gonna have to apply for your visa. So in order to apply for your visa, again, you're gonna have to reach out to your local consulate or embassy of the country you wanna move to and find out what documentation you're gonna need to apply for your visa. This is usually the most difficult parts of applying for your visa because it can take time to get all your documents. Some documents are going to have to be translated. Some are gonna have to be official that you're gonna have to request. Some are gonna require an apostille, which is gonna be a specific stamp that you need to get from your Secretary of State. So gathering all these documents to apply for your visa is going to take time, so just definitely give yourself time to prepare for that process. Just be prepared that things can take longer than they typically do because of COVID. Things have been backed up. A lot of consulates and embassies may be short-staffed, and also the places where you're requesting documents may also be backed up as well. So just be patient. In my case, when I applied in 2015, it took me a while to get the documents, but really once I had the documents and made my application, I really only had to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get my visa. But I've heard of people, having it take now 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months to get their visa approval. So just be patient during this process. Okay, number 4 here on the crucial things that you need to figure out and get done before you move is to think about what type of living arrangements do you prefer. So do you want to live alone or do you want to have a roommate? And we'll talk about roommates if that sounds a little bit crazy at your age. We will talk about that. But your preferences, your relationship status, your budget, your age, the location of where you want to live, all that's going to play a part in confirming your future living arrangements. So let's talk about having a roommate. Are you ever too old to have a roommate? No, not at all. I know in the US, it may not be as common to have a roommate if you're over 30. However, for expats and internationals living abroad, it's not really strange to have a roommate when you move to another country. And there's definitely some perks to having a roommate. Of course, it definitely alleviates the burden, the financial burden of rent and utilities. But also it's great to just have a built-in support system when you first move somewhere. So maybe long-term you don't want to have a roommate, but maybe for those first few months or a year, it's great to have a roommate so that you have someone and you're not so alone when you're moving somewhere on your own. And not everyone enjoys living alone either. So a roommate may be a great solution for that. But I know for some people definitely want to go solo and live solo. I will say when I first moved to Spain, I had roommates for the first few years, but definitely got to a point where I wanted to live alone. So if you want to live alone, definitely check the housing prices on where you want to live so you know what to expect in terms of that. Depending on where you want to live in the world, it can be as low as, $300-$400 to live on your own, but then you can go up to $15,000, $2,000 and above, just like any major city in the US. Definitely prepare for as well. You may have to pay a few months up front. That's not always unheard of abroad. And of course, your security deposit as well. So you may be wondering how you can find accommodation abroad from, if you're in the US or your home country. Definitely tap into expat groups, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's a wealth of resources there for people who are moving abroad. Okay, number 5 on the list here of the crucial things that you need to figure out and get done before you go is to know how you're going to financially support yourself. So by no means do you have to be rich to move abroad, but you do need to have some level of financial security to make this dream even happen. So let's talk about a few of the things that you need to consider in this umbrella of how you're going to financially take care of yourself. So maybe you're thinking, I want to move abroad and get a job in the country that I'm moving to. Definitely your work options are going to be limited by the visa that you qualify for. And I will say getting a job abroad, qualifying for that work visa is very difficult in most countries and in most cases. So please do not assume that you can just move abroad, send resumes, interview, and then you're going to be able to get a job. It's not as simple as that, as getting hired in your home country. So often the obstacle is that potential employers, what they have to do is they have to prove that they cannot find a local skilled worker to fill that position before they can even consider non-residents or non-citizens. And that can be very difficult, especially when we're talking about Europe. Not only, let's say if you're looking for a job in France, does a French company have to prove that no one in France has those skills, but they also, have to look at the whole EU as a whole. So it's very difficult to get a job overseas. It does not mean that it is impossible, but definitely if you're a skilled worker, it does give you a better shot. But it's also, for a company to hire a foreigner, it can be an expensive and lengthy process. So 9 times out of 10, they're gonna just prefer to hire someone locally. So if you want to try to work abroad, which I don't recommend, but there's a better option, and I think an easier option, is to take your work with you. Now that the world has gone remote, you have a remote job, and if you're able to take that and do that from another country, I think that's a great way to continue having an income while living abroad. Another perk of this is that you don't have to rely on qualifying for a work visa. You can go on a different kind of visa that will allow you to work remotely. And also, a lot of countries have been rolling out their digital nomad visa, which allows you to work remotely from many countries around the world. So if your current company does not allow you to work remotely from abroad, definitely take a look out there. More and more countries are open to remote work, and more countries are figuring out ways that their employees can work abroad. So definitely I would say it's something to ask your employer about, or do research if you're looking to switch jobs for companies that allow you to work remotely. I definitely was able to do this. I worked for an incredible company called Power to Fly, which is a fully remote team. They were fully remote before COVID, and a global team. So there were actually 7 of us working from Spain, and none of us were Spanish. So definitely there are companies out there that allow people to work remotely globally. So don't give up on that. So another perk of taking your remote job abroad is that if you're moving to a country that has a lower cost of living and you're getting paid in US dollars or in a currency where you have more buying power abroad, then that is a huge perk for you to be able to take that foreign currency with you to your new home. It'll allow you to have a great quality of life. And a lot of times I think you can work part-time and still have that full-time lifestyle that you had in the US, which who doesn't want that? Another thing to think about when you're thinking about how to financially support yourself is definitely to have savings. You definitely need to have a cushion with you when you move to another country. That number, a lot of people ask, like, how much do I need to move abroad? That number is going to depend on you, really. So people move abroad with anything from, $1,500 to $50,000 to over $100,000. It's whatever you need to feel comfortable. The more you have, the better. I often tell people, whatever your number is, double that, because you never know what expenses are going to come up, especially at the beginning. So it's always great to have that cushion with you when you move. All right, number 6 on our list here is to think about what you're going to do with your home or with your apartment where you're living. What are you going to do with that when you move abroad? If you're a homeowner, definitely your financial situation and how long you want to be abroad may play a factor into what you're going to do with your home. Some things that you can do with your home when you move abroad, you can leave it vacant, you can sell it, you can rent it out, you can join a house sitting program, you can rent it on Airbnb. There are so many things that you can do, so you definitely need to consider all your options and see what the best one is for you. If you're interested in learning more about those options, check out my blog post on moving abroad and what to do with your apartment or house. you can find the link below there. Now, if you are a renter, options for renters are pretty straightforward. You can, sublet your apartment. You can break your lease, which can be costly, so definitely check into that. Or what a lot of people do is just wait until their lease agreement expires. That gives you time to save money, to plan, and also prepare yourself for your move. So you can read about all of these options in my blog post that I just mentioned. Find it below in the link. All right, and that leads us to number 7 here. So part of figuring out what you're gonna do about where you are living is to start decluttering and downsizing. Thinking about what you're gonna do with all of your stuff. I mean, part of moving in general, and the same with moving abroad, is sifting through all of your things and thinking about what stays, what goes, what you're gonna sell, etc. So one thing to really consider, and what I tell people, is that it often takes a lot longer than you would think to go through all of your stuff. So it can be an emotional process, and of course you can definitely feel overwhelmed when you start looking at all the things that you have, especially if you've been living in a home for X amount of years or decades. You've accumulated a lot of things, so definitely give yourself time to go through the process of going through everything to figure out what you want to do. Because even if you don't have a lot of material possessions, the act of decluttering and downsizing, like I said, can be very emotional and a tiring process. So give yourself time, start minimizing things, and think about what you want to sell, what you want to donate, what you want to lend to people, what you can store, what you can throw away. And of course, I think really importantly is what you can scan. There's a lot of paperwork that we have that we don't need to have the actual physical copy of. I scanned so many documents before I moved abroad and shredded things that I just didn't need to have physically, but I wanted to have access to. So definitely check out my blog piece on how to declutter and downsize before you move abroad for some tips and tricks that'll make this process so much easier for you. And again, the link's gonna be down below. Okay, so number 8 on our list here of crucial things that you need to figure out and get done before you go is to figure out what to do with your pets. So your pets, our pets are our little fur babies, are a part of our family. I have a little Chihuahua that I eventually brought over with me. I didn't bring her over initially to Spain, but deciding what to do with your pets during your planning process can be one of the most agonizing and difficult things on your checklist here. So let's talk about what your options are. So your pet does not have to be an obstacle to moving abroad. Like I said, I brought mine over, and most countries will let you bring your pets with you as long as you meet certain guidelines. So some of these guidelines or requirements typically are going to include that your pet has vaccinations, that you have a health certificate, medical records, that they're microchipped. But some, countries are going to require that your pet needs to be in quarantine as well for X amount of time before you can bring them into the country. So think about that if you're thinking about bringing your fur baby with you. But also, you need to make the best decision that it is for your animal. I know I've had friends that are elderly dogs and cats, and really, that kind of trip moving abroad would be very stressful on them and potentially dangerous. And so they left their pets with loved ones back there. So again, relocation may not actually be an option for pets due to their age, due to climate, due to their health conditions, and also due to the regulations of the country that you want to move to. And travel can be a very stressful experience for a pet. So definitely take that into consideration, and know that not all pets can come into the cabin with you. My Chihuahua is a tiny little thing, 5 pounds, so luckily I was able to bring her in the cabin with me, but you have to put your animals down in the cargo, and if you're traveling overseas, that can be a very stressful experience, so definitely think about that. Sometimes leaving your pet with family and friends is gonna be the best solution. I know it's a difficult decision, pets are part of our families. I don't judge anyone for the decision that they have to make, but you have to think about not only what's best for you, but what also is best for your fur baby. All right, number 9 on our list here is something that I get asked about all the time, is that you're gonna have to decide what to do with your cell phone number. If you're like most people, your phone is your lifeline, so choosing how you wanna stay connected with your friends and family is gonna be a really important decision, and there's no one way to do it. There's a lot of options out there. So let's talk about some of those options. People often ask, should I keep my number, and how do I do that? It's really gonna depend on your professional and your personal needs, whether or not you keep your US number or your local number, or switch to a local number abroad or maybe have both. So I actually do both. If you travel back to the US a lot, which I do, I spend about 2 months out of the year in the US. For me, it's really important to keep my US number because I want to be connected while I'm there. But you have to really think about, how you're going to be living to decide whether or not you want to keep your local number. But I definitely recommend you to check with your local carrier to see what the costs are to stay with that phone plan. You may have to look at changing into different phone plans. There are ways to port your phone number as well. So there's a lot of options out there if you want to keep your local number, which I encourage you to do because a lot of times too now, there's a lot of two-step verification when you need to get access to your bank or a lot of online platforms. So definitely having that US number can help you if that's what those platforms are tied to. But though there are definitely benefits of having a local number or switching to a local number. So let's talk a little bit about that. So definitely when you come and move abroad, getting a local phone number is highly encouraged because it's going to be more cost effective if you have a local number than relying on your US number. But it's also going to be a lot easier to connect with friends and also businesses here. You're going to have to think about, if you want to make a doctor's appointment, if they need to reach you, a lot of times the doctor's office is not going to be calling an international number, your US number, to try to reach you to confirm something, but just your everyday tasks, having a local number is going to make it a lot easier to be in contact with whomever you need to be in contact here. So definitely encourage you to get a local number if you're going to be spending a significant amount of time abroad. And there's, a lot of options out here that are great. You can have pay as you go, you can have a contract. So that is definitely a benefit for getting a phone abroad. But I would say in most cases, you maybe going to have both, but definitely need to think about your situation and what's best for you. Okay, number 10 here of the crucial things that you need to figure out and take care of before you go is to research your bank and credit card options. So banking is going to be a must that you're going to figure out before you go. It definitely makes sense to keep your US bank account, especially if you have recurring costs, expenses that are going to be on your credit card, any loans that you have, any recurring bills. It's just going to be a lot easier to maintain those in a bank account that you already have in the US. But on the flip side, if you're living in another country, you're going to need to open a bank account, or you definitely should, because it's just going to make it so much easier to take care of your transactions abroad, especially paying rent is going to be a lot easier if you have access to your bank account. Definitely you can get a debit card over here, makes it easy to withdraw money from ATMs. And also make online transfers where you're not going to have fees that you would have if you're trying to make a transaction from your US bank account to a foreign bank account. So definitely think about that when you're figuring out what you want to do. Definitely, I would encourage you to keep, a US credit card. Getting a credit card abroad is a whole different process. And a lot of times, if you can even get one, the limits are going to be very low. So it's always great as a backup just to have a credit card that has some space on there in case of any emergency. So definitely don't close your bank accounts, keep those. And if you do need to transfer money from your US bank account to a foreign bank account, I highly encourage you to check out the platform Wise, and I'll include the link below, check that out. But Wise allows you to transfer funds from different bank accounts around the world, and it's often one of the most cost-effective ways to do that because it can be very expensive to transfer funds. They give you the best exchange rate out there, and they show you the fees before you hit send, so you know exactly what you're paying for when you're making that transaction, and it is quite low. So definitely check out Wise. All right, and number 11 is something that I already mentioned, but I just want to dive a little deeper into this, is to save as much money as you can. Like I said, whatever you think your number is, double that and take that with you. While you may have a certain budget in your head for what the cost of living is going to be there and what your expenses might be, just remember that unexpected costs, always come up. So just make sure that you are prepared when these challenges come up. Some surprises may be, maybe taxes, extra taxes that you weren't aware of that you had to pay, any kind of deposits, medical bills, any furniture that you have to buy, entertainment, travel costs. There's going to be things out there that you can't foresee yet that you may have to just be financially ready for when you make that move. So it's great to have savings so you don't stress about the money bit when you're living abroad. Also, moving abroad, it just takes time to get settled. So you're going to want some creature comforts. And so it's just great to have that extra cushion so that you can just pamper yourself a little bit during the stressful times of that transition. But there's some things that you can do to prepare before you go to start saving money so that you can have as much as you can before you make your move. So let's talk about those. Here are some little ways that you can start saving before you move abroad. Once you know that you're moving abroad, let's start to tighten our current budget, right? So some small steps that you can take to start tightening your budget is to cut back on eating out, because that does get expensive very quickly, and also buying things that you don't really need. You're going to be moving anyway, so you don't need to be buying things, consuming and collecting more things that you're going to have to take with you. And also just, cut out unnecessary items. So things like cable television, fancy gadgets, your daily coffee, just all of those things add up. So that's the little things that you can do that can allow you to save more money before you go. All right, we are almost there. Number 12 on our list here is to start taking language classes. So learning the language of the country you're moving to is gonna be a big one. If you're moving to a country, again, where they, like I mentioned before, where English is not the main language. So definitely before making that move, I would highly encourage you to at least be familiar with a little bit of the local language. You can take some classes. It's just, learning some of the language, not only is it a sign of respect, but you're gonna feel more grounded, you're gonna feel more connected to the new country and culture that you move to, and it's just gonna make you feel more comfortable if you have an idea of what people are talking about. So let's talk a little bit about, how to learn and how to get started. There are actually tons of options for learning a new language. Definitely you can try out apps. You can watch YouTube videos. You can take a language class virtually or in person before you go. You can also do a language exchange. A lot of times they're called tandem, so language exchange, where you spend part of the time talking to someone who wants to improve their English, and you can speak to someone in the target language that you're looking to learn. Also, research if there's local language schools in your future hometown. See if they have online classes. You can get started with those, and you can transition to in-person once you get there, because once you're settled, you can continue those language classes. But definitely do your part in learning some of the language before you go. Like I said, it's just going to make everything much more comfortable for you in your transition. All right, so now we're here to number 13 of the crucial things you need to figure out and get done before you go. Number 13 on my list here is something that I mentioned briefly before, and it is to join expat groups. So let's talk about that. When I say join expat groups, what I'm really talking about is join Facebook groups. So a lot of people are not a fan of Facebook, but I would say probably the biggest draw to Facebook for a lot of people these days is being a part of Facebook groups. And there is a group for everyone with every interest. And there's so many groups out there for cities and countries that you want to move to. So if you want to move to Berlin, look for expats in Berlin. If you want to move to Medellin, look for expat groups in Medellin. And there are definitely niche groups for women, for African Americans, for families, for LGBTQIA plus communities. So definitely find communities online that you can tap into before you go, because they're going to have a wealth of knowledge for you, and they can answer a lot of questions that you may have, because they're people who have already done what you want to do and have gone through that process, and they can point you to so many resources. And I think that they are probably the most helpful place to really get live real-time information from people who are on the ground in the place that you want to go. Not only are they great to have access to this information, but it's a great place to already meet people virtually that maybe end up, being your friends or at least acquaintances when you move, so you have some contacts and people that you know when you move there. So I cannot support enough how important it is to join these expat groups, because they have provided me a wealth of information. And now I have my own Facebook group called She Hit Refresh, which is for women age 30 and over who want to change their life through travel, whether they want to move abroad or travel the world long term. And the women in this community share and receive so much important information that helps them on their journey. So check out those Facebook groups. All right, but if you're still not sure on how to get started, why not come join me in my 3-hour workshop on how to move abroad that I'm running on Saturday, June 25th, where I'm gonna go over more in-depth some of the topics that we went over here and some others as well. So definitely join that workshop. It's gonna be interactive. I would love to have you there. Check below. I have the link down below where you can register and join me. And also, again, if you are looking to make that move to Europe, check out my digital book, I'm Out of Here, An American's Ultimate Guide to Living in Europe. Again, I've done the research and looked at, the 44 countries in Europe and narrowed it down to the 17 easiest countries you can move to based on viable visa options. There's over 50 visa options in there, so definitely check that out. If you're a woman age 30 and over, come join my Facebook group, She Hit Refresh, where you'll have so much information and inspiration and resources to help you with your move abroad. And of course, if you've enjoyed this video, I would love it if you gave me a like and if you subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any information on how to move abroad.